Hey guys. Okay, so I want to look at the graphs of exponential functions in this video. Before we do that, I want to make sure that you understand that the properties are what we'll be talking about. So here's a look at the properties again. So let's look at some graphs. All right, the very first one. This is h of x equals 1.1 to the x power. If you'll notice, I'm going to change that and I'm going to add another zero in there. Look at that. It's coming closer to a horizontal line. Simply y equals 1. The closer that my base is to the value of 1, I'm going to be looking at a horizontal line. That is why within our what we're talking about, remember with our initial formula, a does not equal 1, it won't be an exponential function. It'll be a horizontal line, y equals 1. Because no matter what I turn around and put in for my power, so if I say 1 to the squared or 1 to the 200, all that means is 1 times 1, or 1 times 1 times 1 200 times. It's always going to be 1. So that's why a does not equal 1. And whenever we're looking at our actual properties, we're dealing with the a being greater than 1 or a being between 0 and 1. So there's the first one. Now let's increase the magnitude of our base. And you'll see it starts getting a more definitive curve earlier. My increase is steeper as I go along, and we'll look at 15. How about I change that 15 to 0 and see it brings it in closer. Okay, so as far as properties, all three of these are continuous. These are all continuous. No break in my domain. We cannot see here if they're one to one, and that is fine. Domain is all real numbers, so it goes all the way over here negative infinity and all the way over here positive infinity. And even though these become steeper, that my domain still continues to infinity. It's just going to be some very large y values that correlate to them, but it still continues on. I would have to zoom out so much and see, even if I'm zooming out, it looks like it's traveling right along the x-axis, but just very massive y values will I'll eventually get over here whenever I plug in x to, you know, put in 1,000 over here for g of x equals 150. Let's see the range. If you notice, range is from 0 to infinity. 0 to infinity. My x-axis is my horizontal asymptote. And as I zoom in here, you can see, man, it gets right there. It's going close. And then for uh, f of x equals 5 to the x, you can see it's starting to get closer and closer. And then, hey, we're starting to come over to purple, and it's going to take longer for it to get down there. But with that being said, my x-axis is my horizontal asymptote. And all three of these that I'm showing you are increasing, meaning that my value of a is greater than 1. My value of a is greater than 1. And to also point out, all of them have the same y-intercept, 0, comma 1. So there are three exponential functions to graph. And I hope that you can see this, and from the other example that I showed you in the prior video of why it is difficult to be able to actually graph and scale the uh, exponential functions and do it by hand, whereas it's a lot easier to be able to graph using technology and be able to analyze that graph. So those were the increasing ones. These are the decreasing. Decreasing means that I have a value between 0 and 1. So whether I write it as a decimal or I write it as a fraction. We'll start down at the bottom. This one is closer to 1, 9/10. If you look, it is becoming more horizontal. So let's change this. Let's say that this is 19/20, becoming a little more horizontal. Let's say it's 199, oops, over 200. See, the closer I make this fraction equal to the value of 1, the closer I'm getting to a horizontal line. Closer I'm getting to a horizontal line. So let's put it back to 9/10. Okay, I have a slower uh, increase in my y values, or actually, as I'm going from left to right, a decrease. And here again, my decrease is much more rapid as my value gets closer to 0. My decrease becomes much more prominent for that function as I'm getting closer to 0. And this value here is much closer to 0. Look at that. It looks like it's almost traveling up the y-axis. And whenever it comes down, though, it's automatically going to the x-axis and running along. Again, these hold true. This is my horizontal asymptote, the x-axis, where x equals 0. And y-intercept for these is also 0, 1. So this is just to give you a view of the way your exponential graphs will look and how they vary between whenever you have a base that is greater than 1 or a base that is between 0 and 1. Remember, to say between 0 and 1 means you're dealing with that fraction. And you can write the fraction as a decimal also. Okay, guys, just a visual representation to help you whenever you do your homework. Please watch the publisher's videos, critically think and structure your homework, and good luck on the rest of your homework.